Have you ever died in a Warzone gunfight you know you actually won? Ever felt the game sometimes feels stacked against you? Well, I think I know what's going on. I collected data from more than 150 Warzone Solos games to back up my theory, as well as 2 years of frustrating anecdotal evidence. If you've ever thought something just isn't right about the game, you've come to the right place. What I found is ensured I will never give Warzone another dollar until either the system is changed or it's improved. Let's get into it. Thanks for watching the video. I'm Boomer, I'm old and just trying to compete in online shooters. This is a bit of a complicated one, so I'll break down and show you all the data I gathered and what I think it means. A quick bit about myself. I'm a former investigative journalist and author. I have 60 days of playtime in Warzone, a 1.57 lifetime KD. I played badly early on and I'm still trying to climb out of that hole, but my seasonal averages are higher. I'm an average player who has learned a lot about Warzone and the algorithms publishers can bake into the game. We don't have fiber internet in my neighborhood yet, but I have 200 megabit download and 13 megabit upload speeds. First, let's establish an indisputable fact. Your ping, or connection quality to a Warzone server, is by far, no doubt, the most important metric in determining if you win or lose a 50-50 gunfight. I deem a 50-50 gunfight to be those in which both you and your enemy see each other and you're both shooting it at each other, not those instances in which you're shot in the back or sniped from afar. Can you win a fight if you have the higher ping? Yes, but your statistical odds of winning are very low, and I'll show you why. At this stage, most everyone hits their shots, uses the best guns, can slide cancel, and move pretty well. All things being equal, the person with the lowest latency is often the person who wins the gunfight, and Activision can leverage that to sway your experience simply by which lobby or server they put you into. That's because the game's guns are designed specifically to be easy to use, and the time to kill is ridiculously low. Don't take my word for it. David Vonderhaar, the studio design director at Treyarch, famously said just a few years ago that ping is king. CDL matches are played in a LAN setting in part so each pro has the same ping, and what this publication says. Let me ask you, if JGod published a video about a gun build that shaves off 40, 60, or 100 milliseconds in the time to kill, would you use it? Of course. Having a lower ping gives you the same benefit. Conversely, having a high ping means you're likely to lose those gunfights. Simply put, in Warzone and in multiplayer, a low ping is the meta you can't defeat. In case you don't know why that is, or maybe you don't believe me, let me show you why ping is so important. The clip you just saw is of me losing a gunfight with a loadout FARA 83 against a guy who dropped in with a KG-M40. He wins the gunfight with a ping of 39 milliseconds. My ping was 82 milliseconds. The FARA destroys that gun at this distance, but to give the KG-M40 the benefit of the doubt, I used true game data to give it a better than ground loot build, and still the FARA destroys it. This photo shows the pink line, the FARA 83, destroys the KG-M40 at distances of greater than 30 meters. So what does all this mean? Why am I making such a big deal about ping? I'm sure many of you know the importance of ping in online first-person shooters. So I'm doing this for maybe some of the folks out there who don't know, but here is why it's important in basic Google Sheets form. So taking the example we just looked at, where I died to an enemy who had 39 millisecond ping, and I myself had 82 millisecond ping, this visually shows you why that's important. So if you take the enemy, for instance, all actions that he performs on his end take 39 milliseconds. Each column represents 10 milliseconds. All his actions, including firing his gun, take 39 milliseconds to reach the Warzone server. So once he starts shooting, the minute his bullets hit me, that damage that's inflicted on me is registered at the Warzone server. Meanwhile, the fact that I've been damaged won't reach me in almost 3 times that amount of time. because in 39 milliseconds that passed since he started shooting, we're only here in terms of that information being relayed back to me at 82 millisecond ping. Similarly, once I start shooting him, we'll take the same time frame here at 39 milliseconds. Even though I hit generally all of my shots in that fight that I showed you, the bullets that I'm firing won't reach the server for another 50 milliseconds. So you can see how quickly a lot of these fights can become lopsided. Here's another example of me dying to an enemy who had a 27 millisecond ping while I had a 113 millisecond ping. And I'll follow up with one more in which I died to a Twitch streamer who had a 15 millisecond ping when I had 86 millisecond ping. So these are extreme examples, but I wanted to include them because they show how gunfights can be swayed simply by your connection quality. We'll get into the 150 plus games worth of data I collected in just a minute, but I think it's important to lay this groundwork. How is any player supposed to find success against even a relatively decent opponent when you have to face these statistical odds? You almost can't. In 90% of the gunfights I lost during the study I performed, it was to players who had a lower ping, and often, like you see here, much lower ping, even though, as I'll show you, much better servers were available to me. This can also explain why, if you've ever ducked around a corner while you're taking damage, you die even though on your screen it appears that you've safely rounded the corner, and that's because the damage that you suffered has already been registered and you're dead on the server before that information can even be relayed back to your screen. And I'll show you an example of that now. Okay, so that's what ping is and why it's important. So what did I find about how Activision uses it? Your experience will likely differ based on how much you play, how long you play, and possibly even how and when you give the game money. Let me show you the data. So when I first started playing Warzone, I started on a console. Back in November of 2021, I bought a PC, a gaming PC, and I noticed that you could overlay your ping or your latency to the Warzone servers, which I started to do. So anecdotally, for a few months, I noticed that often when I would die to an enemy, he or she had lower ping than I had, and oftentimes much lower. So back in January and February of 2022, a few months ago, I started tracking over a 26-day period certain stats. And this is per game. I tracked the number of kills I got, the ping that I had, the person I died to, their ping, their KD, the average lobby KD for the night, and then certain notes. So in this case, the very first game of the study, I took second place to a person who essentially had half as high a ping as I had. Also, having learned the importance of ping in your success in an online first-person shooter, I purchased a Netduma gaming router about a year ago. And for this study, I broke it into two parts. The first 16 days, I played without use of the Netduma gaming router, which, if you don't know, it allows you to set ping limits. In part, you can also set geographic areas where you're willing or unwilling to play in. But for this study, during the second half of it, I set an 85 millisecond ping limit on my Netduma, which just ensures, usually, that you don't get put into a server that has a ping for you of greater than 85 milliseconds. So I collected all this data without use of the Netduma at the mercy of Activision, and then with the Netduma with an 85 millisecond ping limit. I played 109 games without the Netduma and 44 with the Netduma. The reason I don't have a one-to-one comparison there, if you come over here and look at the average time it would take for me to get into a lobby without the Netduma, again, just letting Activision put me wherever it wants to put me, my average wait time was 2.3 minutes. When I set a reasonable, in my estimation, ping limit of 85 milliseconds, my wait time on average was 8.5 minutes. So that's too long to wait to get into a game. And if you look at some of these silly numbers here, this game took 27 minutes to get into it, 24 minutes, 22 minutes. Nobody has time for that. So it's not a one-to-one comparison in terms of the total number of games I played with and without the Netduma, but here's what I've gathered. Then I individually broke those stats out so I could crunch the numbers and see what my stats and experience were without the Netduma and then with the Netduma and its 85 millisecond ping limit. I totaled all these numbers up, gathered the averages, and then I created a comparison sheet with takeaways that we can talk about now. Okay, we're at the comparison page here, and basically I took all the numbers that I crunched, and here's how it breaks down. I'll jump over here to the takeaways. So if you look at all the games I played without using the Netduma, 53% of the time, Activision puts me onto servers with 100 plus millisecond ping, while the average ping of the enemy I die to has a ping of 54.79 milliseconds, or about half. Now, just remember back to the explainer I gave about why ping is important, and then imagine the frustration of having to face enemies who regularly, on average, have half of the ping that you have. To go deeper, I broke it down into the number percentage-wise of games that I had to play at the various pings. So 9% at above 120, 24% of the time, 25% of the time had to play between 110 and 120, and so forth. 67% of the time, we'll call it, I have to play at a 90 plus millisecond ping. But when I turn the Netduma on and set it to a very reasonable 85 milliseconds, my win percentage jumped from 2.75% to 14.67%, which is remarkable, and I think telling in terms of how important even a relatively decent ping is to find success in an online shooter. But maybe the most interesting fact that I found is that of the 153 games that I played, Activision only placed me onto the closest server to me geographically one time. Now that this server is in Seattle, and the ping that you can get on it varies from between 20 and 40 milliseconds, but I got a game, just one, with 31 milliseconds. I'll show you that video now so you know that I in fact can get onto a server with that low of a ping, and you will magically see me win 2 back-to-back 50-50 gunfights that I typically lose. So that's just another example of how important ping is and whether or not you're going to succeed in especially those 50-50 gunfights. I should say that I live in Montana. So for a long time, I thought maybe geographically I was located far away from the nearest Activision server and that high ping was just a reality I was going to have to deal with. But since getting the Netduma, which comes with software that includes a ping heat map, it will show me various games, Warzone specifically, and all the worldwide servers, including all the servers in the US, and what real time the connection quality would be for me to those servers. And here is generally where I'm located in Montana. So for the longest time, I thought I must have poor connection quality to servers because of my geographic location. Well, one of the good features about the Netduma is that you can buy game type, Call of Duty Vanguard, Call of Duty Warzone, CSGO, etc. Look to see what the server quality is worldwide. And right now it is May 14th, right before 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So you can see I'm located here. So really, I'm not that far from the various servers nationwide. I talked earlier about the best server for me being in Seattle. The Utah server, it's not real good today, but better than the average lobby that I'm put into. Colorado, we've got a 67 millisecond ping, 63 and 85 in Southern California, 73, and so forth. So this server's not doing real good right now. So you can see there are various servers relatively close to where I'm at in the various pings that I can get. But during the study that I performed, most of the servers that I was put into were servers with 90 plus millisecond ping, and oftentimes 100 and 110 plus millisecond ping. And at that time, this has changed a little bit maybe, but at that time, those servers were all of these 3 servers or 4 servers on the far east coast of the United States. So for whatever reason, even though I'm located here and the best servers obviously are going to be closer to me, I was regularly put into these servers on the east coast. Okay, kind of wrapping up here on the summary page. Some additional stats here that I thought were interesting. Of the 109 deaths that I suffered in games without use of the Netduma, I died only 10 times to players with a higher ping. So 99 deaths, or 90% of the time, I died to players with lesser ping. Of the 44 Netduma deaths, I died only 4 times to players with a higher ping, again, which is 90%. So 90% of the time that I play Warzone, I die to a player who has lower ping. The last thing that I want to talk about here is something that I almost considered not including, because what I'm going to talk about here, I have no proof to back up, although I do have a little bit of evidence. So I started getting frustrated with Warzone about a year ago, probably last summer, summer 2021, and I stopped giving the game my money. When I bought a gaming PC in November, I switched my Xbox account to a PC account, and in that process, none of the COD points that I had accumulated transferred to the new account. So my new PC account had 0 points, and so to unlock the Battle Pass at that time, it was probably a $20 purchase. But within the last year, I've only given Warzone $20, and I basically refuse to give it any money, and I wouldn't have given it any money if I didn't lose all my COD points magically when I transferred from Xbox to PC. So I haven't spent really any money on the game in a long time. But I've noticed in Warzone Season 2 and 3, when I've unlocked the Battle Passes using the accumulated COD points that you earn just by playing, the very next game after spending those COD points, I won the next game. So after unlocking the Season 2 Battle Pass with COD points, the very next game I played, I won, and the same is true of the Season 3 Battle Pass. It was on day 14. I had a 7-kill win with 66 millisecond ping, which is one of my lowest pings, and I happened to win, and this was the game after using accumulated COD points to buy the Battle Pass. So if you look, I got a win here. My ping was 66. Now let's see how often I get into a lobby with the 66 millisecond ping. 11% of the time. So it's very, very rare that I ever get into a lobby with that low of a ping, and it just so happens I won the game. Was it Activision's way of throwing me a bone for technically spending virtual money on the game and maybe a way to encourage me? I don't know. I found it kind of suspect, but again, that's maybe more anecdotal evidence than proof. So I've shown I die all the time in frustrating 50-50 gunfights to players that have a much lower ping. The numbers don't lie. Back in 2020, when the game first launched, I thought it was entirely me and basically that I sucked. So I practiced a lot against bots, headshot only, with aim assist turned off, and even with the sound off, so I had to rely solely on visual reaction without the benefit of audio cues. I did that every night for 15 to 20 minutes or so to warm up. I bought a fancy controller, the Netduma gaming router, and then eventually a high-end gaming PC. And I did get better, but the more I played, the more I noticed I still died in the same ways. I'm not oblivious to the fact that there are a lot of players who are better than me and who would still probably beat me even if I had the lower ping. But because of the lobbies Activision throws me into, I have to be perfect. And it's rare for almost anyone to hit all shots in all gunfights. I can't miss shots because in 90% of 50-50 gunfights I come into, I'm already way behind the curve. It's an impossible standard to live up to. This experience has almost all but removed the fun from the game. The first thing I look at when I load into a server is my ping. If it's 80 milliseconds or higher, I feel I'm forced to camp or to at least play conservatively. I rarely push or play aggressively because even if I do everything right, the enemy almost always, as I showed, has matchmaking upper hand before we even engage. The deck is stacked statistically and algorithmically against me if I don't, and you might be in the same boat. I also quit going to the gulag because 90% of the time the replay shows the enemy who killed me had a much lower ping. If I die in-game, I just back out because the gulag of all fights is where ping can most be leveraged for or against you. You both have the same weapons, tacticals, and lethals, and the fight will undoubtedly be a 50-50 gunfight. Activision's matchmaking algorithm chooses almost blatantly to put me into servers with ridiculous ping. Even when they finally put me into a lobby with low ping, I still face players with even lesser ping. That's 100% indisputable. And it seems to me that Activision is leveraging ping to ensure at least some players have a good experience and others not as often. So why would they do this? One of my upcoming videos will detail why I believe Activision's algorithm employs engagement optimized matchmaking, or EOMM, rather than skill-based matching, or SBMM. Even directors at Infinity Ward said at launch, the game doesn't use SBMM. That's important because EOMM has many more dirty tricks that can be used, but I'll save those details for that next video. In a nutshell, here are the only plausible reasons for why I have the experience I've detailed. Number 1, the ping I was given was a fluke that I only suffered during the 26-day test. I know otherwise, but you don't know me and have no reason to trust me. Just know I wouldn't publish a 20+ minute video if I hadn't had this exact bad experience consistently and for so long. Number 2, the data generated by the Netduma gaming router is just flat wrong. I don't believe this to be true, however, because from a command prompt, I've pinged various other servers around the country to see what the latency is, and those latencies generally match with Netduma's. Or number 3, of the Warzone servers available each night, only a few are used specifically for solos mode, which is the game mode I overwhelmingly play. The hole in this theory, though, is that I'm usually, not always, but usually, put into a good server with lower ping my first match of the night and around the average last game I play. So multiple servers with good connections are always available to me for solos. After studying EOMM, my gut feeling is that none of those apply. This is a theory and I could be wrong, but I think I'm given a bad experience for 2 reasons. The first reason is that I play consistently no matter my experience. The algorithm has learned that I'll be on about 9 p.m. every night and hop off between 11:30 p.m. and midnight, whether I get wins or I get stomped. Number 2, I don't give the game my money. One EOMM trick is to put players into lobbies with higher skilled enemies who use blueprints and character models that are only available in the store. The theory is that this encourages the lesser skilled player, after dying so often to a certain skin or gun, to feel compelled into believing that acquiring that store item will help them achieve similar results. As I mentioned, my first game on each night, I generally get a low ping by my standards. Most of the following games are average or poor, and then typically near the end of the session, I get a low ping again. That tells me they want to give me a good experience early on to encourage me to play, know I'll continue playing regardless of outcome, and then they try to leave a good taste in my mouth during my average last game, so I'm encouraged to return the next night. I think the game's a bit of a scam. I don't like saying this because I know there are a lot of really good, talented, hardworking people at all of the Activision companies that have no say in the algorithm used in the game they've built. But I'm an older, stubborn gamer. I will never again give Warzone another cent until this part of the algorithm or experience is changed. The game, with its crazy fast TTK, is disingenuous otherwise. As a former athlete who can't compete in sports the way I once did, I'd hope this BR would help to fill that void, and it has to some degree. But I can't support something if it feels disingenuous. I don't mind facing better players, but it's a joke to face better players who also have half or a third of your ping. Matches should be grouped by connection quality. If you ever die in a gunfight that you feel certain you won, if possible, look at your ping and then the enemy's ping. If there's a wide gap in the enemy's favor, start asking questions of the system that put you into that predicament. To end the video, let's sum up my experience. 1, in 90% of 153 games, I died to a player who had lower ping. 40% of those deaths occurred to players with half or a third of my ping. 2, in 153 games, Activision placed me into the best, closest server 1 time. 3, my win percentage jumps from 2% to 14% when I get into a server of 85 millisecond ping or less. This is less of a statement about my skill level and more about the importance of a reasonable connection quality. And lastly, your best statistical bet if you want to have fun, a chance at reasonable kills, and a win is to back out of any game in which you have an 85 millisecond ping or greater. You can win and succeed with higher pings. I won a game with 117 millisecond ping, and I amassed a 2.18 KD during my test without the Netduma router turned on. But it's more frustrating than fun to continually lose in unfair gunfights. Am I the only person who experiences this? It's gotten to the point for me that I need just one other game to come out that has realistic graphics, fluid movement, and good gunplay for me to say goodbye to Warzone long term. 50 million other players agree. My full methodology for the 153 game study I performed is in the description. And if enough people ask, I'll make the raw data public so you'd be free to check my math. I don't think this video by itself will sway Activision to ban lobbies based on connection, but if enough others have the same experience, or learn maybe that ping might be why they die in those close gunfights, and they voice their frustrations, maybe the company would listen. Either way, I had to get all this off my chest. I really appreciate you watching through to the end. Here's to hoping Warzone 2 is better. Have a great day.